Yes.
Here we go. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to my channel for Clubhouse folks. This is how we speak on YouTube. I want to thank you for joining me. It's 7:11 a.m. 7-Eleven is a store in Asia, and I open 24 hours a day. And I always wondered why they called it 7-Eleven if it's open 24 hours a day. It doesn't make any sense. Completely wrong branding. Anyway, guys, we're on Clubhouse this morning. I know you have all been complaining to me that you're not on Clubhouse because you are on Android. And I am listening to you and trying to fix that problem. So welcome to Clubhouse. I am joined this morning by two incredible entrepreneurs, Hannah and Rachel. Hannah, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. I'm loving being a rule breaker this morning. So thanks, Simon, for not pre-warning us, because I'm not sure I would have agreed to it if we'd known what was coming.
Yeah, I like that. Plausible deniability. This will keep you out of Clubhouse prison. Rachel.
Hi, I am part of the Android crew also. I feel very strongly also, although as someone who runs a tech company, I do understand why they're not developing the Android first. It's really hard. But I have an Android, and I too am locked out of Clubhouse. And I'm talking to you on an iPad, which is really annoying because it doesn't link to anything else I own. And it's also my kids' iPad, and they get annoyed with me. So I am Team Android.
Team Android, exactly. So already people are online saying, finally, someone giving Android lovers some attention. And it's interesting because I've noticed that people that aren't on Clubhouse, who don't understand it, and on Android are like, oh, Clubhouse, one more social media, who needs it? What a load of rubbish. And it's only because they haven't been on it. And they don't know what we know, right? And so Clubhouse, if you're watching this, we're actually keeping your Android users, who will be your customers later, happy. And feel free to send Hannah, Rachel, and myself and the folks at Startup Radio a check anytime. But Rachel, could you tell people listening a little bit about who you are? I can't believe there's anyone that doesn't already know you, but just what do you do?
Yeah, it's a lot of people. So hi, I'm Rachel. I live in London and I run a tech company there. We're all about childcare. It's a company that is aiming to build better childcare infrastructure. I get very exercised and passionate about the lack of childcare infrastructure in this country. And when I had my first baby, my first of two kids in 2016, and realized how awful childcare was, and from every direction, too expensive, too difficult. It's a disrespected profession. It's incredibly hard work, but it's very low paid. There's so many problems in the industry. I decided to fix them, and so I founded Koru Kids. And we currently provide a lot of in-home care in London. We're helping a lot of families through the pandemic with homeschooling, and we're actually just expanding outside of London right now, so that's exciting.
What's great, Rachel, about outside of Clubhouse is you're absolutely allowed to promote yourself. You're my YouTube channel now, and you're absolutely allowed to. So we're breaking the rules both sides now, aren't we? We're breaking the rules both sides. Hannah, what about you?
I should just say to Rachel as well, I'm very much looking forward to being a Koru Kids client.
Yeah.
Because I've spent a lot of time on your website, and it's amazing. So massive congratulations to everything that you're doing. Because as a new mum, genuinely childcare, you don't realise before. You just have no idea. You walk into this thing and you're like, yeah, everyone talks about childcare being a nightmare, but hey, how bad can it be? We're in 2021, it can't be that bad, and it really is. So I think Koru Kids is the antidote to that, and I can't wait till the time when I can be one of your very, very happy customers.
Oh, thank you. I'm really excited about Clubhouse for two reasons. One is I'm just loving being part of Startup Radio. The other reason is I'm using it for business purposes to kind of find my tribe. I'm completely obsessed with mental health, children's mental health and well-being, emotional well-being. And I'm obsessed with the things that we can do with our kids that lay down the foundations of positive mental health for their whole life long. And I really want to identify all those things and then train our nannies and childcarers so that we can be this amazing positive force. So that's what I'm trying to use Clubhouse to do outside of Startup Radio, is find my tribe, basically find people who are also excited about that, and start really great conversations with them and start that movement going.
I would just like to say, Rachel, not only are you helping families and with what your business does, I learn from you every day in business as well. Yesterday, you posted up a brilliant insight into your recruitment process, and I have stolen it and implemented it today. So,
what? That was quick. How did you do that overnight?
Well, no, to be honest, I've been struggling with the hiring process my whole life. I find hiring people very, very tough. Like you said in your post about, a 30-minute chat and the bias you have within the CV selection, it's also true. So when I say I've implemented it, I mean I passed it to Talia and said, this is how we're going to recruit people going forward. Yeah. So the key is, read someone else's brilliant idea, pass it on to one of your colleagues who's also brilliant, and sit back and take all the credit for it. So,
shall I sum up the idea for people listening? In case
definitely, this is the 717 idea on how to hire people. Go, Rachel.
Yeah. So I am obsessed with improving hiring processes. And so we do tons of stuff on this. I've got like many thoughts on hiring. But this one particular part that we've been doing this experiment with. So the idea is that normal traditional hiring, you get sent a pile of CVs, maybe cover letters, maybe not. And there's far too many, you might get like 200, 300, 1,000 or something, depending on the role. And so you can't possibly talk to everyone and interview them. So what you do is you look at the CVs and you kind of try and you're thinking of some relevant keywords for whatever the business is, and you try and find them some kind of experience. You're looking at sort of font and layout and judging people on that. And then you're also looking for prestigious, where they go to university and what employers and stuff. And so you select a few people based on that, and you throw away the vast majority of other people who never get a chance at all in your process. And then you spend a lot of time, talking to these people who you've plucked out. And I also think that I have many other opinions on how you should structure your interviews, but that bit of like who you actually bring into the top of your funnel, I think is deeply flawed, because what you've just done is you just select in on a whole load of things that have a lot of inbuilt bias, and you end up hiring people, or you end up taking forward people who are quite like yourself and probably good at talking, because that's what an interview is. And it's a terrible predictor of on-the-job performance. So what we've done instead is we've flipped it around, and we only look at the CV at the latest possible part of the process. We've pushed it all absolutely as far back as we can. And which means that actually I start talking to people and I have zero contextual information about them at all. And anyway, so the very first step that we put in is we put in screening questions. And one of the guys in my company just built a Google form and a Google sheet. So we built this ourselves. It's super buggy and hacky, but whatever. And so we have for each role.
The person on the phone you're asking me is Rachel. She's the founder of Collie Kids, so for example, and she's sharing her story with us.
Screening questions is
about how to hire people.
Tell us about a time you had to have a difficult conversation in order to achieve an important outcome, something like that. And the purpose behind that is it shows you a bunch of things. It shows you how does this person think? Does this person think deeply? Do they reflect? Can they write? Can they write in a way that you want to read it? Because that's pretty important for most roles. Can they, how do they think about difficult conversations? What do they think is a difficult conversation? Because very often people will answer and you're reading it and you're like, well, it's not really a difficult conversation. It's just a day. It's just a normal day. What do you think is difficult? It also tells you what they think is an important obstacle, which again, you can look at it and go, oh, wow, sorry, an important result. You can go, oh, wow, that's a really important result. Or you can go, it doesn't actually sound like that was that important. And that's the one example you're choosing. So you can look at a lot, you can get a lot out of the answer to just one question. We ask 5 questions. And then what we do is we separate every single question from each other. Halo effect, we read one great answer and then you kind of upmark all the other answers from the same person, because you just kind of get into the vibe of this person's great, which is not fair either. And we separate them from their name and also from each other. And then, so we get 2 markers, And each marker just gets a list of answers to all of these questions. And it's really tedious and mind-blowing to do. You have to like sit down for ages and mark all of these answers, which is grade them 1 to 3. And then the Google Sheet matches up the 1 to 3, the scores with the names again. And now we can see who scored really, really well. And you get some candidates who've got 3s across the board. They're thoughtful and reflective and mature, and they've got these great experiences and all this stuff. And then we looked back. We did this exercise where we looked back at the CVs and said, okay, these people who performed amazingly, would they have been the people who would have risen to the top? And surprise, surprise, the answer is not yes. Like, the answer is sometimes, some of them, but it's not, it's totally not a perfect match. And so that means we're taking forward into the rest of our process the right people right from the start, and it's got nothing to do with prestigious education or where you worked or anything like that.
Everybody is loving. Go ahead, Hannah, go ahead.
I just think that's fascinating because I think we talk so much around bias in hiring, and actually that's the first solution I'd heard of that, as Simon said, he could implement overnight, because it just is very straightforward. So I think it's really interesting. My one question, Rach, actually would be around writing skills, and actually are there jobs and roles where those writing skills may not be as important, but people aren't able to communicate in a way that, that is through a different medium?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that the point is that you think about the screening depending on what the role actually is. The point is you think about what you need to be good at in the role, and then your first hurdle is something that is requiring those skills that are relevant to that role. So it so happens that the roles we've used this for so far are email specialist, marketing manager, finance director. We're about to use it for engineers. We're about to use it for product designer, and we're also using it for customer service, which involves a lot of writing. So it's like a lot of answering emails. So every single one of those roles.
Whose economies are collapsing?
Really good at writing, but could completely imagine a role where you didn't need to be good at writing. I think if I had one of those, I think I would just do a voice note instead. I would do exactly the same questions, but I would just set up something where it's like, can you WhatsApp me a voice note? Or we'd have to think about accessibility, but I'd do something along those lines.
I wonder if I'd ever get a job with you, Rachel. I've not had a job interview for 30 years. But I've always enjoyed learning the tricks of interviews, like the questions people will ask you that are impossible to answer, and you're supposed just to say, I don't know the answer. All these clever interview techniques. But maybe we should do a room. Come and interview with Rachel. That would be interesting.
I'd love that. I'd love that. So it is actually my favorite thing, because it's a bit like I get annoyed about when I think about childcare and how broken the industry is. I get annoyed about that, and I get really annoyed about hiring and recruiting as well. I just think there is so much human misery which is unnecessary. There are so many people who are in the wrong jobs. There are so many companies that hire the wrong people and then make them miserable. There is so much.
I'm hearing startup 2 here, Rachel.
Honestly,
I'm hearing startup 2. I couldn't agree more.
Or maybe a particularly ambitious side hustle.
Yeah.
Well, we have been asked several times if we would sell this system that I just described, which it's far too buggy. It's really annoying to use. But no complaints for the person who designed it. He built it, in about 2 hours. He's an absolute whiz with Google Sheets. But it wasn't his proper job to actually build it. So no, we cannot sell it. It's nowhere near good enough to sell. There is actually a commercially available version of it, which I really should start taking some kind of commission for, because I recommend it all the time. And this is not a hashtag ad. I don't know who they are. I'm not affiliated with them, but it's called, the website is beapplied.com. And I think their software is wonderful, and if I could, I would use it. Yeah, I would use it. Unfortunately, the reason we don't is we are locked in, and for annoying, boring reasons, we're locked into a different solution. But if anyone really wants to do this in their company, check out beapplied.com.
I think it's interesting because part of my mission is to help 1 million people start a business of their own, and a big reason for that is that there are a lot of people not enjoying what they do every day, and to me that is the definition of success. Not money, none of those things. It's about enjoying your day to day. So actually, what you're talking about there aligns with a problem I'm also trying to solve. It's definitely, I hate to see people doing something they don't love, and I hate to see people hire people and have stress over that experience because people aren't right for the jobs. It's not good for the person that's joined. It's not good for the person who's had to hire that person. So all round a big problem there, Rachel, and love talking about it. Again, we should definitely do that. If anyone in the audience wants to get a job with Rachel, go check out what she does, put up your hand and come on stage. I am looking for a social media manager. So if anyone wants to come up on stage and pitch this morning for a job, you can quit your job you hate Monday and hopefully start one you like. You're welcome to come on stage and say hello. Guys, what are we actually doing this morning? I guess I had an idea to, share Clubhouse on all the social media channels. And it's very interesting because there's a lot of people on TikTok right now basically saying thank you to us for bringing Clubhouse to Android. And yeah, if you guys want to do anything particular this morning, let me know. I feel like we should engage with the audience. I can see John's just joined us and Aaron's here. And Sonny, I don't know you, but welcome. Aaron, do you want to say a few words?
At the moment, just good morning. Fantastic.
Perfect.
To wake up and hear your bright voices.
Nice. I feel like I know you so well now. Every day I have some interaction with you. So it's kind of amazing when you kind of, we were saying it last night, we haven't met each other, but we know each other so well. It's kind of interesting. Sonny, how are you doing?
Very good. Thank you, Simon, for inviting me to the stage. I just had a quick question I wanted to ask Rachel or any of you guys up here, really. Just about, obviously, I know you were talking about sort of later stage hiring, but we're quite early on in our journey. We've got some Kickstarter places coming up as part of the government scheme. We're also just about to do our first round. And obviously we have hires in mind, but you know, what are the key things to look out for when you make those first crucial hires, really, when you're trying to grow the startup after you raise that first round? Obviously culture is a big thing for what we're doing as part of the health and wellness startup, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, cool. That's such an exciting stage. I've got loads of thoughts. I think you're totally right that culture is incredibly important in your first few hires. Those are the ones that are going to set the tone. It's kind of like getting a fire started. They'll be the ones that, you know, get those first little flames going. And then my company at this stage, the culture is, you know, we're about 40, 45 people. And it's now so strong that I just have to sort of fan it every so often and give indications of, you know, things that are good and not good. And I do a welcome with all new starters. And so I guess reflecting on it, I do still do quite a bit of stuff, but not nearly as much as we did with the first few hires. So I think you're right. Your intuition's right there that it's completely critical. I think in terms of skills, the transition I've seen as we grew from, you know, I'm a sole founder, so it's just me for first 6 months. And then I brought on one person and then another within the next sort of 3 months. And then we grew to about 6 people about a year in. So it took us about a year to get to 6 people. And the transition has been from generalists to specialists. So in the early days, we used to recruit, we actually had a name for them. We used to call them stem cells. And what we meant was, you know, in the body, stem cells are cells that can develop into anything. Like it can become, you know, a nose or a tooth or whatever. And we recruited these people and we thought, we don't know in what direction. We would love them to grow with us, since we don't know in what direction yet. And so the core things that we looked for was, are they really smart? Like we just literally, I want the smartest people I can find because this is freaking hard. The second thing is I want them to be really humble. I do not want smart and arrogant people. I do not want people who, you know, think that they know stuff that they don't. That is absolute death in a startup where you're trying to figure out answers. So I want smart and I want humble. And then also I want them to be really kind because I want to build a generous and, you know, and positive culture. And I want to come and hang out with these people. You'll have your own culture and your own values and stuff. And maybe fun or funny or something like, whatever else you want to put in there. But those are the things that we look for above anything else. And so we put in, probably if you heard what I just said before, it might not surprise you to hear that we put in some pretty rigorous hiring processes to find those people. And let me tell you about one of them, because I do think this is something everyone can do in their hiring. So for the humility one, humility is a really, really, really core value at Cora Kids, and everyone we hire has to score well on humility throughout the interview process. I have a very strong belief that it correlates. It's basically the same as learning orientation, and that is what a startup is. We're trying to learn as fast as we can to get collectively. So humility is very important. So how we tested for this. We put absolutely everyone up until we were about 20 people or so, maybe like that. I think except for the engineers had a different test, but everyone else at this stage, we were all doing customer service. We were all like on the phones at some point. And today that's no longer true, but it was true for a long time. And so what we would do is we had this little scenario that we would write out. It was quite a complicated scenario. And we'd write it up on a piece of paper. This was in person, obviously, pre-pandemic. And the interviewee we would give them a piece of paper, look at it, and we would say, we'll leave the room for 10 minutes, read this, and come back and let us know if you've got any questions. And then we would come in, and quite often they would not have questions. That was okay, but we loved it when people had questions, because that showed that they were reflecting, they were actively engaged, and also that they just weren't afraid to ask questions and put their ego below their knowledge, their drive to actually get the right answer, which is super important. Anyway, so we loved it when people asked questions. And then I would go, and I'd pretend to be a customer. I'd go in a different room, and they would do a phone call with me, and they would be trying to coach me through this situation that we'd laid out. And we would come back in. It would take about 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes. Come back in, and then we'd do a debrief, and we'd say, what do you think went well and not well? And at this stage, we're looking for them to be self-critical.
Good morning, TikTok. How are you guys?
Occasionally people would say,
I've brought Clubhouse to the internet. I know a lot of people want to know what Clubhouse is.
Quality of reflection, and again, this drive to always be better. And then we would.
I have brought Clubhouse to the internet.
And there was always feedback.
I'm hosting a room on Clubhouse, and I want you guys to be a part of it.
Okay,
so
great, so
I'm broadcasting it so you can hear.
And quite often they weren't really listening.
How could I be more critical?
They didn't.
Tired, Brendan. Why are you tired? Sorry to hear that.
We loved the people who so wanted. They were like feedback magnets, throughout their life. They were always.
Wow, you want to hire wolves?
Better.
That's scary.
And those people were really listening. They saw this. They saw what we were saying to them as a gift, and they were listening so attentively, and they could absolutely summarize back what we just said to them. And we liked those people. And then we would say, okay, cool. Now let's do it again. The exact same thing. We're going to do it again. And so I would go off to the next room, and we would do it again. And what we were looking for, and this was the heart of the exercise, we were looking for improvement between the two exercises. It didn't actually matter how the person did in the first one. Some people were not comfortable on the phones. They weren't interviewing for a phone, primarily talking job. They might have been a bit shy. We didn't care. That was not the point. The point was, could we see a marked improvement between the first time and the second time? And so when someone did all the things that I said we were looking for, we hired those people, and that just set this amazing learning culture forever after.
Such a great insight, Rachel. I just want to add something, Sony. I know this is everyone's got their opinion about hiring, so it's interesting to see different best practices out there. This is my view when I start my companies now, when I hire people. It doesn't mean I'm right, it's just my view. But I actually always look out. My first hire or my second hire, I'm actually looking for someone that 2 years from now, 3 years from now can take over from me. That's someone that I could trust to run the business. And it takes years, I think, to cultivate and support someone into a potential position like that. Not sounding arrogant, but I built a lot of businesses. It is hard to run a company But I always look out for that person who could be my number two, and that's someone who therefore I can scale the business. And sometimes the mistake I see in my own past is I will build a business. I am the center of that business. I am the brand. And then next thing I know, everyone's doing business with me, not the brand, and I'm stuck. I'm stuck in that business. And I personally think, you never want to be stuck in your own business. It's just as bad as being stuck in a job you hate. And so I always look out early on for that, that frankly, that much younger me who can do the job. So I, for example, in my platform now, brought on someone called Talia. She basically is brilliant, I think, and she can run what I'm doing better than me long term. So just a tip there, something I find a lot of entrepreneurs don't scale themselves early enough in the process. A lot of people will disagree with this statement, by the way. A lot of people will say, you just hire people that do certain jobs and you run the business and that's that. But just my view. And I know we have John in the room, who is a very wise owl. I don't know if he wanted to chip in on any of this, but...
I don't think I've been described as a wise owl before, but thank you, Simon.
There you go.
Very nice to see you again. Actually, sorry, I'm sort of going back to right to the start of your, I don't know what this is now, podcast, TikTok, it's all, when you talk about breaking rules, and actually one of the things that you will know, and you'll know the phrase, which is, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. And I think actually, as an entrepreneur, often that is the way in which you get the advantage and the success. And I just had a short story about a friend of mine, which I thought I might share, because actually it may be that other people have great examples of where they've broken the rules as such, but it's been fantastic for their business and things like that. I don't know if that's something you'd like to hear.
I'm actually really interested in this subject, John. I part of my theme this morning was breaking the rules. Hence, right now, we have taken Clubhouse to 22,000 Android users right now. So, and that means everyone in this room that comes on stage and says hello will be reaching a whole new audience and community on top of their own. So I actually hope that we can open up Clubhouse. I'd love to hear it. Just before we hear that story, John, can I just check with Sony? Did we give you the answers you need?
Yeah, no, that was very useful. I did have one more question.
Sure.
Purely around, have you ever made a hire that, didn't turn out right, and how did that look, and how did you deal with that situation?
I feel like Hannah knows this one. She's got to know the answer to this one.
Simon, what are you implying?
I'm implying that your experience is so vast that you've had this experience.
Do you know what
Is it me or I can't hear Hannah? Is it my sound?
No, I can't hear you.
No, she's gone.
Oh, Hannah, are you back?
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, whoever it went wrong, they tried to cut off your mic so you don't tell the story, but go ahead.
First world problems, the AirPods have died.
Oh, no.
Sonny, I wanted also to just talk a little bit about your first hires, because we actually made some first hires really, really early on in the journey of Max Creative. And to start out with, we were a content marketing agency. So I started the business with my sister. We were creating all different types of content. And so we hired people to work with us on that business. And, we made 2 hires really early on. And actually that really feeds into your second question as well. So we made 2 hires really early on, both quite young, both generalists. One with a very specific skill set that we thought we did need, and then the other who just had this amazing energy and attitude, and really was just, we hired her because of her vibe, and I think listening to Rachel speak, she's obviously found a way to really kind of codify how you find that vibe and that attitude. But for us, it was a very much a gut hire. So we hired people on the premise that they were coming to work at a content marketing agency. And within kind of a couple of months, we actually pivoted the business. So we identified that audio was the growing sector, the content that we were most excited about creating. And we pivoted the business, and this was about 2.5 years ago, to be just a full service podcast company. So we're now one of the biggest independent podcast companies in the UK. But for that first hire, who is still with us today, she had to completely shift her mindset around, at first we were creating lots of different types of content. We had clients who were brands generally. Our role was to get kind of as much exposure as possible for that content. And then, 6 months into her job, we said, you know what, we're actually pivoting the business slightly, and are you with us, and can you come with us on this journey? And there wasn't even an element of doubt, because for her it wasn't about the specific skill set that she was providing. It was about the attitude and the values, which were completely growth mindset, constantly learning, incredibly ambitious, incredibly creative. And she's now our absolute kind of top performing producer. So she has managed to kind of go from generalist to specialist, but I think starting out with someone whose attitude is absolutely about believing in your mission, believing in you as founders and as humans, and that you're kind of taking them on a journey that they want to come on. And then that ability to be quite adaptable in an early stage. So as Rachel said, generalists, stem cells, which I love and I'm going to start using. But the second person that we hired, and this was down to completely our own naivety, wasn't the right fit. So didn't have that growth mindset. And actually, I would say this is one of the things that I feel most, I don't have a lot of regrets, but I feel most sad about, you know, that feeling in the pit of your stomach when you think, I just didn't handle that right. And so I'd actually love to listen to people who have managed to handle this really, really well, because we were, my business partner and I were quite young. We'd hired, by this point, I think we had a team of about 5. And, you know, we had to let this person go. And it was purely because we had hired badly. There was absolutely no fault of this employees. And I think we have hired a lot on gut, and, you know, literally 99% of times that's been right. But this one particular time, it was wrong. And so we had to sit down and have a very difficult conversation after a series of, you know, attempts to kind of make it work. And we had to let that person go. And it was absolutely the right decision for her, and it was absolutely the right decision for the business, but it wasn't easy at all. And I would say that's why hiring is so key. That, you know, we've hired on gut. Rachel's talked about a process for how to do it, and I would say if you can combine those two things and get your hiring decisions right, then that absolutely sort of removes the need for these difficult conversations. But anyone who has sort of handled that in a way or doesn't feel sad about it, I would say, yeah, I'd love to hear from you, because it was definitely one of the most difficult things we've had to do.
I have to say,
I think
Hannah,
the most that there's no perfect hiring process, and you know, as much as we think about it like engineers and try to, you know, fine tune every single step, and we really do, of our hiring machine, like you also have to have a process for moving people on. And that's equally important. And we've had to move a lot of people on. I think our aspiration is we get it about 80, like if we can get it 80% right, I think that's like world beating. I think it was Google who did an enormous people exercise involving tons and tons of data. And they said that they got it something like 60-70% right. I mean, it was just so low, basically, that your accuracy really in hiring. And I think for me, my experience has been, well, almost always, not absolutely almost, but almost always, when you have that conversation with the person who needs to move on, they already know it, and it almost always the conversation is a relief to both parties. And it's so hard to remember that when you're the one having to initiate the conversation. And, you know, I think it's very human to get, you know, to have sleepless night before, pit of your stomach, like dread it, hate it. You know, I think that's just showing that you're a human being with empathy and feelings, and it's completely normal, and still happens when you've done it many, 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 many times, by the way. But it can be a positive experience. You know, you're sparking a positive move in the life of the other person, and it almost always ended up being a positive interaction in my experience.
well said, Rachel. No one gets it right. And I think one of the biggest things you've got to learn as an entrepreneur is to step up and let those people out of the trap they're probably in themselves if they're not enjoying what they do. So well said. Guys, I'm just gonna reset the room and just say what we're here this morning doing. We are Startup Radio. We are here as always to give advice and support to anyone that needs it in the entrepreneurial space. The theme this morning, I feel like should be taking risk and making a leap and taking chances. And so if I personally taken a lot of risk in my life, and I've broken the rules a lot. And I know that can sometimes backfire. I've got a horrible story about a rule I broke once that horribly backfired, which I can tell later if you want to hear. But I'm really interested to hear from the audience I guess the rules you've broken and how it's worked or not worked for you. I think that could be really interesting this morning. Me and the crew are up on stage here. We are here until 9, and then our colleagues will take over and be here all day, helping you in any way you need. But if anyone's got a rule-breaking story, something they did to break the system and do something good, hopefully, feel free to put up your hand and come on stage and share it. And John, I wondered if you wanted to tell your story now.
Yeah, so I'm not going to tell you a story about the rules I've broken, because, frankly, they're far more interesting, but I think it is inherent, as you say, Simon, to being an entrepreneurial. You've got to be able to go over, and if you don't break them, you've got to bend them at times. But a friend of mine, back in the early 80s, he has an extraordinary story. And he was actually a lawyer, but he decided, he'd been to America and he'd actually gone into a Domino Pizzas and really liked Domino Pizzas, and they were at that time only in America and Canada. He came back to the UK and thought, right, I would like to get a franchise or open a Domino Pizzas. And this was in the early 1980s. So he wrote to the owner, Tom Monaghan, and the founder of Domino Pizzas, and said, are you putting a franchise? You can put one into Canada, can I have one in the UK? And he got a fairly standard letter back from Monaghan saying, well, actually, we only went into Canada because one of our experienced people in America decided he wanted to do it, and I've trusted him. He's been with us for 5 years, and I'm setting a rule that if somebody's going to open up a franchise as we expand, they're going to have to come and work in a Domino Pizzas for 2 years, and we're going to have to see them and ensure, and that's the quality control, and you'd imagine that to be the case. So my friend was pretty disappointed with that. Excuse me, but he, excuse me, hang on.
This is where we all hold silence for a second.
Sorry, too early in the morning for me.
No problem, thanks, man.
So he then heard that Tom Monaghan was actually speaking at a conference somewhere in America, and he thought, right, I'm going to go and doorstep him. So he's only 27 at this stage, I should say. He's 27 years old. So he got on a plane. He didn't have a lot of money. He got on a plane, went to the conference, and literally called the founder of Domino Pizzas as he got off the stage, and just kept talking and talking, saying, look, I'm the guy, I'm the guy, I'm the guy. And so Tom Monaghan thought, goodness me, will you not shut up? Okay, look, if you're serious about taking this, we may look at bending the rules, but you've got to come and work in one of my stores, come and work in a Domino Pizzas for 6 months, and then we'll have a look. So my friend went there, worked in Domino Pizzas 6 months, impressed Tom Monaghan, was given the franchise to the UK, brought Domino Pizzas into the UK, highly successful businessman, now sits in the House of Lords, Rooney Vergy. And that was a 27-year-old thinking that he would firstly pay for a flight to America, which wasn't cheap in those days in the 80s, and go and doorstep somebody coming off the stage, breaking the rules that effectively that person had said were there in place to preserve their company. And I just think that's a staggering story of a young 27-year-old doing that.
Love it, John. It reminds me, I was lucky enough to meet Travis, the founder of Uber. He was trying to get into China, and I was part of the delegation that were showing him what was happening in China. And he told this story about how he started Uber. And of course, most people know the basic story of the business and what it's about. But the bit I didn't know that he told was about how Lyft was actually the company that first came up with the shared economy, and Lyft, his competitor. He said this in a public forum as well. Lyft was actually the company that first invented Uber. He wasn't the first. He just executed, some would argue, better. But he told a story about how Lyft CEO and himself both got a cease and desist letter from San Francisco's council equivalent to stop. And if they didn't stop, there was up to 8 years in prison if they didn't stop what they were doing, because they didn't have taxi licenses and they weren't actually allowed to do what they were doing. And he said he was actually going to shut the business because he was so scared of this letter. He didn't think it was worth it, going to prison for it. So he was about to shut the business, and then he spoke to the Lyft founder, and basically the Lyft founder said, "I'm keeping going. I'm not going to stop. This service is needed by the people, and people will revolt if we have to shut it down. So we're going to push through." And he said that that's the reason he kept going, which ironic, isn't it, that his competitor kept you going and break those rules.
Sorry, Simon. The thing is, of course, those with a vested interest in maintaining the status quo will always try and control and stop things. So whenever there is a cartel of taxi drivers or a cartel, that's, I don't mean that in a criminal sense, but a group of people who have dominated a marketplace, they'll hate somebody coming in that's a disruptor. So they will try and create the rules of the game. And the beauty of any entrepreneur on this table or anybody else's, club group is that that you have to make your own rules in the same way that you make your own identity, your own expression of what you want to solve for people in order to gain a market share. So many people like Steve Jobs changed the game. And that's one of, you've got to address the people that have a vested interest in not letting other people access into the market.
I love breaking the rules. I love this theme this morning. If anyone wants to come up and tell their story about breaking the rules, please feel free to put your hand up and come up. I'm sure Hannah and Rachel have got a few stories around this. But Darren, you've been waiting patiently, so I feel conscious. I want to get into the crowd and see what you guys are up to. Darren, thanks for being patient. And Mike yourself, how can we help you today?
Oh, thank you very much, Simon. It's an absolute honour and pleasure to be on the stage with so many people. I have to say a couple of things, really. Firstly is, Rachel, what you said about empathy and intelligence and humility in the hiring process, I couldn't agree more with. I think it's fantastic listening to what you said. Simon, in terms of humility, I've been following you for about, 8 months, 9 months now, and I thought you were balmy when I first saw your first TikTok. But obviously looking into it, I'll let you respond.
No, I was going to say your first impression is right. I think I am a little bit balmy, but thank you for following me on TikTok.
No, but I think having looked into it and looking at it back then, I'm truly humbled. And similarly, John, I was party to Entrepreneurs with Heart, which ran for, I think, over 24 hours or so. But I missed you. I was on first thing in the morning. Listened to it. I really wanted to speak to you, and then I came back on in the evening and I missed you again, which was unfortunate. Here you are, so I thought I'd take the opportunity, come up on stage and say hello. My journey is all about Aftercloud. It started with the journey of grief, and so
Android is not available for
explain what that is.
Clubhouse is not available on Android, but I'm bringing it to you guys live now, so you can experience it. And so this is the interface.
With family and loved ones, but it equally applies to anybody. So it's an app essentially. We're working in hospice, and yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Really, I don't want to take up too much of anyone's time. Thanks.
Dan, thanks for coming on stage and appreciate it. It's nice. How did you connect today? Tell me you were listening to this on TikTok and then you came through to Clubhouse. I'm just experimenting with breaking the rules this morning by broadcasting our Clubhouse room on all my social media channels. But just out of interest, were you already on Clubhouse?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I was listening on TikTok initially. You came up as a live feed on TikTok, and then I switched over to Clubhouse.
Woohoo! This is very exciting. This is very exciting, Darren. I'm following you now, and I'm going to follow you on TikTok. If you may post a comment on my TikTok, I'll also follow you back there. And this is really nice. I feel like I've been neglecting my my other communities by being so obsessed with Clubhouse. It makes me very happy to have you here, Darren. Thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
So we are here, guys, Startup Radio. We are this morning talking about everything, really. But the one thing I'd like to really dig into today is rule breaking the rules. I personally have broken rules in my career as a startup founder many times. It has horrendously backfired at points, but equally, I feel like it's definitely something you've got to do. John was kind to share a story about Domino's Pizza founder here in the UK and how he broke the rules to become the founder of Domino's Pizza here in the UK. I was talking about Uber and how he broke the rules. If you have a story about breaking the rules, you're welcome to come up. And of course, if you've got a question for anybody up here, you're also welcome. We are also live, I should warn you, on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, of course, and Facebook. Multiple channels. So I think we're reaching about 24,000 people right now. So outside of this Clubhouse room, you guys are welcome to come up on stage and say hello to the world. Mitchell, did I say that right? Mitchell, welcome. Please unmic. You've been patient. How can we help you today? What's up?
Yeah, thanks, Simon, and great show. Pleasure to be here. It's actually Mitch, but Clubhouse has your legal name. You have to put your legal name.
So, is that right? The legal name?
Yeah, so my legal name's Mitchell, but I'm known as Mitch, and as you can see from my cartoon character. It's Mitch the Taxman on social media.
Wow, Mitch the Taxman, I love it. Good personal branding. By the way, if you break the rules in Clubhouse, what do they send around Clubhouse police and off you go to like a special room inside a prison? How does it work, I wonder?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to find out, so that's why I changed back to my legal name. So,
fair enough. Mitch the Taxman, what's going on?
Yeah, I thought if I just put into context what we're doing, and then I can ask my question. My question's around building a sales team. So I was wondering if I can just, give you some background, which would put some context into my question.
Sure, keep it to 60 seconds because there's a lot of people who have put their hand up and I haven't brought them on stage yet. I don't want to make people wait too long. Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. So I used to be a partner, one of the youngest tax partners in the UK of a top 50 accountancy firm. I resigned and set up my own business with a client of mine who had exited his business in tech. We saw a bit of a gap in the market to deliver all your professional services needs for an entrepreneur and private client under the same company. So we've set up accountancy, tax, legal, financial advice, all within the same company, all regulated. We've worked hard over the last 3 years to set that up. And I'm having basically discussions with my business partner, because we now want to go on to the next stage, to say that in terms of sales, that is usually front-led by the advisors, so the financial advisor, accountant, whoever, lawyer, whoever it may be. He comes from like direct sales, getting the sales team out there. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are, or what anyone's thoughts are on building a sales team which sits below the actual advisors, professional advisors, and whether you feel that would work within a professional services environment.
Okay, so I'll quickly answer this, but if anyone else wants to jump in as well. But Mitch, I was kind of hoping you'd say, "Hi, I'm Mitch, and I help you dodge tax. Let's break the rules together." That would have been funny. Probably not a good idea, mind you, but funny. But
well, I would have done if you didn't say it wasn't being recorded on YouTube and TikTok and stuff. Then I might. Fair
enough. That's why I'm warning people. We're broadcasting this today, yeah. But no, I've done exactly what you're talking about within the context of building a creative agency. So at one point, I had 300 creative people working for me, and I had a sales team of 3 of us. And one of the things I discovered being at the coalface myself on the sales and marketing of that business was that you have, I think, and again, it's just my opinion, doesn't mean I'm right. Other people can jump in with a different view, but my view was always you have to be very careful in the hierarchy of sales, because at one point I put the designers above the salespeople. So in other words, the salespeople would go to the designers and say, "Do we have capability to do more work? Right? Can we do more work?" And of course, a designer will always want more time. My wife's a designer, so I can say this. They're the more time they have, the better. But of course, as a business, you need to have a steady flow of work, so the sales cycle can be long. Anyway, long story short, my learning from that experience of 15 years of doing that business was you actually need to give the salesperson and the person executing the work equal authority. And in some respects, the salesperson needs to almost not be connected to the execution. In the sense that if I know how busy my team is, then I'll be scared to win business. But sometimes that business will take time to actually get over the line, get the contract signed. Plus, frankly, you can always hire more people if you've got the business. And if you don't have the business, and then suddenly there's 2 or 3 months of no business, then the people you've actually got hired, we don't have an income for them to cover their costs and salaries. So I basically built this system where we would, of course, listen to the design team. But one of the reasons we were able to get it up to so many designers, we were bigger than Google in Asia at one point. We had so many people on staff was because of our sales process, in the sense that we would win work and not ignore the production execution team, but somewhat take it with a pinch of salt that they were always going to be busy. And when we won CNN as a client, for example, we had to hire 20 people to handle the work. But if we'd gone to the sales team and said, "Can you handle this CNN project?" Of course, they would have said no. So I'm sure it's no different with accountants. You've got a lot of work to do. It's quite manual still, a lot of it, checking stuff. So I would say just have a good recruitment process one side to deal with the overflow that could happen, maybe a good freelance pool. But on the sales side, I think it's that salespeople should be independent. Now, that is my opinion. It doesn't mean it's right, just from my experience. Anyone else with a different opinion is welcome to jump in. And if no one has a different opinion, oh no, Hannah might have the same opinion. Don't know.
I just add to that. I think we're on a much smaller scale than Simon was talking about with 300 designers. But from my perspective, that is a real pain point for us as well, which is, are we too busy to take on this new work? And we're always trying to take on the new work. But for us, that handover, I think in a smaller business, so making sure that process of a client going from sales to execution and making that as smooth as possible. So whilst there is a disconnect during the sales process, but holding that person's hand as they come through the process for us has made it a lot easier also to kind of give our executioners, no, definitely the wrong word, the people that do the executing, time to kind of get their heads around the project as well with the sales team on that process with them. So I'd say having a bridge between the two once you've won the work in a really kind of structured, well thought through way makes that all a bit easier as well.
I think it definitely helps having someone. So, for example, in my business, my wife was the head of design. So she had empathy and understanding for the creative process. And so she would protect the team from overload. And that's why we would hire people, not just give them more work without any consideration. But as a salesperson, I think you've got to walk into a room and be confident to win the work. And so, yeah, it's an interesting one, though, that you've got to carefully balance it. But you asked about the sales structure. I think it's important to give the salespeople freedom to go and win the right sort of work that's going to keep people in employment and enjoying what they do.
Thanks, guys. It was that's really helpful. It was just more about the professional services in terms of a lawyer or accountant or tax advisor. Can a general sales guy or girl, build the trust with a potential client because they're like, no, I just want to speak to the accountant, but we're just going to try trial and error and see and see what happens, really.
Yeah, Mitch, I absolutely think. I mean, I was not a designer. But I had a relationship with the client. The designer also who worked on the account with me also had a relationship with the client. I think the important thing, again, it's just my opinion in sales, and I've been doing it a long time, but it doesn't mean I'm right, is I think the people that are going to have the relationship need to be in the room as early as possible, building the relationship with the client from day one. If, for example, the accountant, like in my case, I've got an accountant. Actually, he's made a mistake because I now want to speak to him because I only know him, I only trust him. So I'm always talking to him direct. But I've said to him as well, if he wants to scale, he needs to actually adjust clients like me and start giving me a client servicing manager that can deal with the day-to-day. Maybe I still speak to him as the owner every so often, but you can't scale if you make it all about, and they're busy doing stuff on the back end. They don't want to be all day long client servicing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem with the traditional accountancy and professional services in general. Because everyone wants the partner or their manager to deal with it, and it comes down to trust. And we've had the debate about bringing in the client services division. So the client services.
Mitch, you're going a bit quiet.
Oh, sorry. So we've had the debate about bringing in a client services division, like you mentioned, so that they can be there for the client if they've got an issue or they need to find out what their liabilities are. But at the end of the day, they're still going to want to speak to their trusted professional. So then it's about, is the client services person a qualified person, part qualified person? So it needs a lot of thought and trial and error.
Mitch, I'll say one other thing to you, and I'm conscious there's other people waiting, but I'll say no, it's okay. It's a really good question you're asking, so I think it deserves a proper answer. I'm happy to help you on the sideline because I built a service business. It doesn't really matter what profession it's in. It's the same structure. I'm happy to help you, 15, 20-minute call about this. Just ping me. But I'll just say one of the things I saw in someone else's industry, they're a recruiter for lawyers. So they basically, for companies, they go out and help companies find lawyers for their businesses. And what they did, which I thought was really clever, is they actually hired a lawyer as their recruiter. So she's actually a really good friend of mine, Nisha, if she's listening. But she basically was hired not as a lawyer, but as a recruiter. And she loves it because she's helping lawyers like her find jobs they love. So she actually gave up the main practice and now focuses in. And the beautiful thing about that, you might find within your talent pool, there's actually someone that says, you know what, I'm doing this because I've done it and I know how to do it. I don't want to lose a salary. I can't take a step back. But you give me a chance to be like and this will make you different, by the way, a client servicing accounts person that can then, talk to clients but still filter the work back to the main operations. That could give you an edge.
So I'm conscious that we've got to move on. Just a quick thought on this. I think that it's worth going back to first principles, Mitchell, because when you were talking about a salesperson, you automatically defaulted to customers want to speak to the person doing the work or the actual accountant. I don't think that's the case. I think that customers just want the outcome. And where a lot of organizations fall down is if they've got too much work on, it's too long to respond, and they're being ignored. Now, at that point, they want to speak higher up the chain, and there's an escalation. So building a real high-quality customer service function that acts like a high-quality waiter in a restaurant, I think could alleviate that pressure, and it certainly works well in some of the businesses that we work with.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much, and we're going to do our best to implement that. So we'll see what happens. Really appreciate the advice, guys.
Keep in touch, Mitch. Good luck.
Cheers.
Guys, we're here this morning, Startup Radio, to answer your questions about entrepreneurship. And today we're talking about taking risk. In part, what big gamble have you taken? Breaking rules, I believe, is very important. Anyone's got a story about breaking the rules and how it's worked or hasn't worked for you, please feel free to come up and share your story. Jimmy, you're actually up. I'm not sure if you're on or just listening, but I'm going to just say if you want to say something, you'd be welcome. Otherwise, Jimmy, if you want to, I'm not sure. I haven't checked the back end chat this morning. Sahil, are you there? Sahil, I'm probably saying that wrong. Are you there, Sahil? Suhail.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm there, sorry.
Am I saying your name wrong?
That's Sahil.
Sahil, oh, welcome. Well, do you have a story about how you broke the rules, or do you want to ask a question, or how can we help you today?
There's no question, just to give you some of my experience, and hopefully someone can learn from that as well, possibly, you know. So I'm in the restaurant business. I've been in it since 1996, yeah. I've got my main branch from school, Tinseltown, like an American diner in London. I want to talk to you about hiring. So what happened was, I built that business myself. I was an accountant by training, and sort of fell into it and built it up to about 15 restaurants. And then as we were growing, my team around me said, look, we need to get more corporate people, we need to get to the next level, we need to get to the next level. So I'm getting into a tunnel, I want to walk, so it may echo a bit. So you need to get a much more sort of corporate team. So what we did, we went on a...
We lost you in the tunnel. We lost you in the tunnel.
And hired like one of the top area senior managers.
Tunnels, so annoying. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. I feel like I'm on a Zoom suddenly.
Okay, so we did.
Why don't we come back to you when you're out of the tunnel?
Yeah, so we hired like a really one of the top area managers from Frankie and Benny's, Cafe Rouge, yeah. Then we hired someone from Pizza Express to really push that business on, okay? And it worked out to be a complete and utter disaster. And I'll tell you the reason why, because we're an independent, and we started from like one restaurant and grew business. And what happened was they came in with that, we come in with an independence mindset, an entrepreneur's mindset, and they came in with a corporate mindset. And just the language and everything was just so different. And what happens is when you hire people, what it costs you, the salaries don't cost you. What really costs you is the decision making they make. And they made some horrendous decisions. And when all this was going on, I was speaking to my lawyer, my HR person, and they say, so Hal, why are you hiring people if you're not going to listen to them? Then the logic of that is absolutely a thing. But they did such damage to the business. And the risk I took, I called all of them in one day.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, we lost you. Yeah, but I love the insight though. I really think the insight's really valuable. Actually, I think though, I don't know, Hannah, Rachel, Aaron, what you think of this, but I love the Steve Jobs story where he brought in the CEO of Pepsi, I think it was, and it was a disaster, right? And I sometimes wonder if when you look at the movies of this, they show how he's always asking. I've forgotten his name now. He's always asking. Say again? Oh, you're back.
My original team sort of managed them out. So we went through a horrendous exercise. We got rid of them, yeah, and went back to our original DNA of who we were as a business. And to be fair, that was about 3-4 years ago. And obviously, our sector's been hit really hard with this pandemic, yeah. But it kind of prepared us for everything. So we started in restaurants. So I ended up
Sahil, your mic's going in and out. Why don't you get to a better reception to finish off this story? Because I don't think you could even hear us.
I mean, Simon, actually, I think there is a great point there, though, and actually also feeds into, I'm sure, other people with this experience. When you're creating your own business, one of the critical things is that, particularly if you're a startup, bootstrapping a business, I created my own agency back in 2010, was that sometimes you want to bring the experience in from bigger businesses, but if they spent their entire time in a large business, they also consider that there's all the support that they'd have in a big business. So I remember having one individual I brought in who had fantastic experience, but kept turning to me and saying, well, where's the IT support, and where's the HR support, and all the rest of it? And actually at that time, we were sort of relying upon our own ability to come up with the right solutions and a bit of external advice. So there's the other mismatch sometimes where you want the experience, but people who spend all their time in the corporate world don't actually understand that they have to lift themselves in the entrepreneurial space. So I know Aaron has sort of gone from that back into the corporate world, which is the sort of same journey that I had, but it's two very different things where people have had their professional experience shaped by having access to a lot of other functions within the business.
I've actually had a different experience, by the way. I hired. I know what we're talking about here is true. Generally, there's two worlds, right? The corporate world versus the entrepreneurial world. But I've actually had the opposite experience. I brought someone who was running an agency in Asia called Jack Morton. They're the market leader in the event space in Asia. I brought him in to run my company Fluid, and he did an amazing job. And he actually got rid of the business class ticket mindset, and he really kind of got his head down. He did an absolutely amazing job. So I kind of think that it is still about the recruitment process. It's what Rachel was talking about earlier. I think it's actually, I blame myself for past mistakes when I have hired corporate people and it's gone wrong. I've not done my due diligence. I've not spent enough time knowing whether or not they can either be converted or what their personality profile is like. And I was going to say, I think it's Tully, that Steve Jobs hired the Pepsi CEO. The mistake he made was not hiring him, in my view. I actually think you need to bring in proper management. I think they brought Eric Schmidt into Google, and that actually worked really well, right, for Google founders. I think the mistake Steve Jobs made was he was listening to him instead of telling him and training him and teaching him how to be Steve Jobs, how to be an entrepreneur, how to think innovatively. He was too busy looking at Tully as a chairman, as someone to give him advice, someone with the experience. It was actually the other way around. He was the one with experience. And if he'd actually hired him as his number two, instead of looked up to him as the CEO of Pepsi, I think it would have been a different dynamic over time, and Tully might have worked out. Just my theory, testing it out with this room now.
I mean, I would definitely agree. I mean, I certainly wasn't suggesting it can't work. I'm just saying that actually it's something to be alert to, because actually the expectations through the recruitment process have to be, obviously, as you say, absolutely right. So it's the expectations on the part of both parties. That's what I think is so interesting.
Totally. I'm interested in Aaron's story, going in and working for a corporate after being a startup founder. I haven't grilled him on this yet, but Aaron, how's that been?
Yeah, I think John makes a very good point, and we've certainly seen many mistakes across the businesses where we have got the hiring process wrong. And I think you're right, Simon, that it's the hiring process rather than the individual. And if you default to, this person can come in, look at the experience they've got, look at the numbers, the metrics that they've achieved in their previous role, they can do the same here, and you miss all of those really important steps that Rachel highlighted, then you can end up with a mistake where you've got somebody who requires a support structure that may not be in place, or you've got somebody who hasn't got their ego in check, or isn't a cultural fit. So I think that's definitely an experience that we've had. My journey is slightly different in that, having started, founded, scaled and sold businesses, I then joined the board of much larger existing corporate entities that are 30, 50 years old. And it's only then that I started to roll my sleeves up and go from a non-exec position on the board to more executive. And I definitely find that there is a difference when you are coming into a culture that is established, particularly if you want to begin to transform that culture. I miss the good old days of being able to actually have 3 people in a room and have a discussion around them about what's important to us. If you've got hundreds or thousands of people in offices around the world, it's very challenging to be able to shift that culture that's so ingrained.
And I think that that's often a reflection of the people that are in the business plus the recruitment process in place. So with a culture, I think you've not only got to change the day-to-day activities, you've got to really work on some of the things that Rachel was talking about earlier that mean that every new hire that you bring into the business adds value. And the difficulty in that sort of entity is making sure that everything doesn't run to the lowest common denominator, i.e. when you bring in great people, that you don't end up with them defaulting to the culture around them versus bringing everyone up, so raising the bar collectively.
Well said. Yeah, and I also like the insight, John, as well. Thank you so much. So guys, we are here this morning. We are Startup Radio. We are here to help. We do not sell anything, no sales funnel. We don't want anything. We just want to help anybody out there that might be in need of entrepreneurial assistance, someone to talk to. And so feel free to put up your hand if you've got a question about business. I guess we've got two themes running through this morning's session. One is how to hire and the hiring process and insights and learnings from that. Plus, I really like the concept of taking risk. I am broadcasting this for the next 10 minutes on social media because a lot of Android users want to know what Clubhouse is about. They feel left out. So I'm broadcasting this Clubhouse room through my channels to Android users. And we've even had some of them, my TikTok community have just been joining here in Clubhouse as well. So anybody on TikTok listening now that wants to jump onto Clubhouse, go buy an iPhone, come and join us and say hello. But I think up next is Akshay. Am I saying that right? Akshay. There we go.
Good morning, it's Akshay.
Yay, morning, how are you?
Awesome, very good, thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. Firstly, awesome, thank you very much for this morning so far. It's been very, very, very insightful. So we've made lots of notes, so appreciate that. Just to give you a bit of context, so my name's Akshay. I run an online estate agency business called doorsteps.co.uk. We came to the market with the goal of disrupting the estate agency space. We've come in by charging 99 quid to sell a property rather than 1-3% commission because I felt the market was very, very broken. I started the business when I was 17, now 22. We've had a pretty exciting journey, sold over £1 billion worth of homes so far. The team's grown from just myself to just over about 60 people so far. And I think my question to you guys, or my challenge at the moment, is really around kind of the management team. So I've kind of resonated with a lot of what you guys have said this morning around early stage recruitment, growing the team, finding people with a great attitude, and actually trying to see where they can fit best. And we've had a lot of flexibility in our recruitment process so far. Where I've kind of struggled is, we're looking at closing, hopefully in the next couple of months, a slightly bigger fundraising round of about 2.5 million. But my concern is the business is still very much reliant on me. So I'm currently on the hunt for an operations director. So firstly, since I know you've got it broadcasted, just drop me a line on Instagram at @Ruparelia if you are interested. But secondly, really any advice to what I should be looking for, because I'm toying up with the idea of looking for someone in the traditional estate agency space versus maybe similar startups or scale ups at this kind of stage without the estate agency experience or otherwise, but someone that I can really rely on as a number two with some experience alongside that.
I think I'm going to let Aaron answer this, but just before Aaron, I'm sure he's got a great insight on this. I just want to say something. I've got an idea for you, actually. I'd love to talk to you about it. Basically, I wanted to build a property agency with soul, an estate agent with soul. And the idea would be that every time we sell property, yes, everyone makes money like they normally do, but a large chunk of the profit goes to solving the homelessness crisis. I don't know if you'd be open to building such a philanthropy piece within your business, but I think that would mean people would want to list property with you because it would be doing good. And I think people want to buy property from you because it'd be doing good. Love to talk to you about this idea at some point.
Absolutely.
I would invest in you if you were willing to do it, just to say it on air on my own broadcast as well. So, but as far as number two is concerned, I've got an opinion, of course, but I feel like Aaron's got a lot of experience in this area. Aaron, do you want to jump in?
Actually, first of all, congratulations. I think that I know a little bit of your story and it seems to be going great guns. So well done for getting as far as you have. And I'm sure that you've got all the answers already and you're doing the right thing. You came on here and you put the word out. You've got to be careful when you bring in a number two. A number two, as Simon alluded to earlier, it's great if you've got a number two that can potentially be the number one. if something horrendous happens to you, or indeed if you decide that you want to spend more time on philanthropy as you progress through your journey. So be cognizant of that. But most importantly, and number two, it's all too easy to go and hire a reflection of you. And that's a mistake that I've made a couple of times in the past. We're naturally drawn to people who you can easily go and have a drink down the pub or down the cafe with. Sometimes actually what you've got to do is make sure that you're hiring for your weaknesses and deficiencies. And to do that, you've got to understand what you're not good at, and you've got to admit it to yourself. And certainly it's an exercise that I went through when we were rapidly scaling one of the startups, was making sure that I drew out on a sheet of paper all of the areas that I am not good at, which is quite a long list, and all of the areas where I didn't enjoy doing the work. And we actively tried to recruit to fill those, because otherwise you find that having the number two there might be great as a sounding board, but if they're thinking the same way you are and they're aligned to your thoughts already, they're not necessarily questioning.
Okay, guys.
Now,
this is Clubhouse, and I wanted to show you what Clubhouse is all about. So I hope you've enjoyed joining this Clubhouse this morning. If you want a Clubhouse invite, ping me with why you need one. I'll try and get you in. And this is where I'm spending a bit of time lately, helping people as we are this morning. And I hope you found it interesting. I'm going to end the broadcast here. We have a new podcast just released. Nick Jenkins, Dragon and Dragon's Den, sharing his story. And I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Otherwise, I hope you've also enjoyed the insight into Clubhouse today. I'll see you soon.
Project that I was talking about, but there's very few people who